So yes, Mr. Salzer, I have so many questions to ask of you.
Where do you start?
Well, I see that you're from the Chicago area originally. What was your growing up in Chicago? What was basically what made you feel compelled to be involved in music and your love of music? What drew you?
I think I was a typical teenager from the standpoint that we had, parties and kids over at our house. Our house
Hmm.
was a place for kids to come, and we used to have a hobby store, and I sold records out of it when I was 15.
Hmm.
And so I just grab a bunch of 45s out of the bins and head for the backyard, and we'd play them on the phonograph and have a dance party. But I just started, I started going to teen dances and decided that it didn't look that hard, so I decided that I was a singer.
Hmm.
And I basically went to a promoter and said, I'm a singer. and he and he made me a headliner just on the basis
Hmm.
of asserting that. And so for about 3 months, I was singing in ballrooms that attracted 2,000 people, and I was a guest singer, being backed by whatever band was the headliner.
Hmm.
That's kind of how they did it back then. But there were 3 or 4 bands, and I'd usually be a featured singer at the end. And it was all just on the basis of my claiming that, yeah, I was a singer. I, I'm half Greek, and I used the name Demetrius. And yeah, it was kind of interesting to have my name on the radio, Demetrius this weekend at the Muskego Ballroom. But as it turns out, I enjoyed booking, getting jobs for band more than I liked singing. Adulation, is fine up to a point, and it got old too fast for me.
Yeah.
So to actually do something of substance, where I was helping guys get jobs to make a living, and essentially working with all the bands in the area at the time. But then I left Chicago and came here, thinking that I was going to be able to get airplay for one of the bands that I worked with, because they had a #1 song in the Midwest. I Fought the Law, and that was in 1961. That song wasn't a hit till 1964, and then Bobby Fuller Ford did it.
Hmm.
It was an old cricket song.
Hmm.
So, but when I got out here, I couldn't get airplay, and ended up taking a lot of odd jobs. And, well, the music industry was in the middle of Pale. I was too young and naive to know that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get airplay, and ended up marking time for 3 or 4 years.
Hmm.
And then when I moved up here, some kids heard my history, and they asked me if I would manage a band of friends of theirs.
Hmm.
So I started doing that, and then one thing led to another. I ended up managing other bands, booking halls to find them work, and then ended up doing essentially the same thing I did in Chicago, except it was 1966, and so I ended up booking bigger and bigger bands, and because I started out at that, at 66, it was the same time when the Doors were starting and other groups, and so
Sure.
I
Yeah.
basically was paying the Doors 150 a night, and other bands, like
Hmm.
500, 600. It was the beginning of something.
Yeah.
I started working with Bill Graham in San Francisco. I had an inside track to all the LA groups, and he had the inside track to the San Francisco groups, and so we basically worked together and traded acts.
Well, you got the Cow Palace and
Well,
places.
yeah, I wasn't so much aware of that as I was the Fillmore.
Ah,
Yeah,
the phone.
that's where Usually I ended up booking the Doors and Buffalo Springfield, groups like that. And
Wow.
from him, I'd get the Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, Moby Grape, bands like that.
Yeah, sure.
But as far as getting into the record business, because I used to do my own radio spots for my concerts that were coming up. The engineer that helped me do those recordings or those commercials, his father died, and they had a record store in South Oxnard on Saviors, and it was in a little arcade, and his mother was the only person that could run it, and she didn't want to do it. She was too dispirited because she had lost her husband. And this disc jockey, music director, took me out to lunch 3 times, and each time I said no, but finally I agreed to take over the store. But then again, I found myself returning to my roots of retail, and this was in July of 1966, and by October I opened a store in North Oxnard in Carrot Square. And then by Christmas I closed the South Oxnard store and then focused on the North Side store. And then within 3 or 4 years I built the store here in Ventura, and then operated the Oxnard store for another 3 or 4 years, and then closed that.
So, with you being in the Ventura County area and basically in Oxnard and Ventura, did you feel that there was kind of a wealth of opportunity having record stores, or basically in this area, not really, not just branching out maybe to the Los Angeles area or further?
Well, that's a good question, because I did for a time think that maybe I would have a chain of record stores. Matter of fact, a guy that started up the Licorice Pizza chain came to me and asked me if I'd help him, and I did. But I decided I didn't want to be just a record store. I like the idea of the cultural aspects of lifestyle and and music, and I've always been diversified. Even in the Oxnard store in the early years, I sold car stereos, installed them, suede jackets. We used to sell dozens of those. Just incense. We have a distinction of being the first head shop in Southern California. But that's because I brought, going up to San Francisco in the Haight district, and hanging out with the Dead, and it just essentially imported that lifestyle down here. But I never was a hippie. I've always been a capitalist pig. A businessman.
Yeah. It's a business that grows. Basically, with one of the things that has attracted me so much to you is the fact that you are so very much so a person who seems to believe that physical media is something that will continue on. Do you think that there will still be a great deal of longevity for people buying physical media vis-a-vis Blu-ray, DVD, and of course vinyl and CD?
It's a hard question to answer.
Sure.
Because I'm not necessarily working to keep it alive as much as I'm just basically doing the job that's in front of me.
Sure.
In other words, it's still a viable business. It astounds me that I'm able to operate a video store in this day and age that is still successful and still something that people want and come to me to to rent videos and buy them too. But it's funny, I served for 12 years on a national video board of directors with all the chain guys, including the guy that owned Blockbuster, and got to know all those guys. And one time I was sitting with the president of Blockbuster after a board meeting, and we were having a drink in a bar. And he started telling me what his strategy was, that he was going to basically put all the little guys out of business by having hundreds of copies of a hit movie.
Sure.
Back in the day when, it cost $100 and you had to, you only got maybe 15 or 20 because you couldn't afford to bring more in. But he made a deal with the studios, and they just brought in, tons of product. And and that's when he told me, he said, I want to be the last man standing. After I put everybody out of business.
Sure.
And it's kind of funny, like I say, because that was my strategy.
Yeah.
When I first started in business in 1980, I was one of the first video stores in the country, and it caught on real fast. I was the only employee. I got started in a gas station showroom, and ended up building that business within a year to start hiring people, and then customers would come in and say, would you open a store in my neighborhood? And it goes back to your question about, a chain or
Sure.
Having stores in other areas. And this was, like I say, this was 1980. I had already made my mind up that I was not a chain guy.
Yeah.
I like to know my customers, and I like to know the people that work for me. I take a pleasure in that. And having a far-flung resources is just not my thing.
Sure.
As I found out. So I helped people open stores. And there were dozens of stores, and one by one they went out of business. And my strategy was to build the store, which I did, and have what I considered a regional superstore that would be a resource center for people, near and far.
Sure.
People, because we're next to the freeway, they would travel up and down the freeway, and any movie that they wanted, if it was ever available that was halfway decent, I had it, and I still do. But the idea that I thought it would go away in 5 years, and I paid off the building. I owned the building free and clear. I built my buildings. I built the record store, did 3 remodels. I built this. Been handy to be able to tailor my rents accordingly. Instead of having a landlord come to me and tell me how he's got someone else that wants my property. I don't have that. I don't have someone coming to me saying, well, I got somebody who wants to pay me an extra $5,000 a month, and you want to match that? I don't have to deal with that. So I'm my own landlord. And it's not about money for me. It's always been about service, filling a need. I think one of the most important things about any business is having a reason to exist. And when you're filling a need and people, people want something that you have, you're basically, doing a job that you have something people want. And I like the idea that I have employees that really enjoy what they do, and so customers appreciate that and they gravitate toward that.
And it certainly doesn't hurt that it's something you love as well, music and all that. Because, personally thinking about it, I don't know if you've heard, about video retailers, very significant, very famous video retailers in the Los Angeles area, like Vidiot's, unfortunately went out of business, and businesses like Cinephile, are struggling to hang on.
See, I run my business differently. Vidiot's was owned by 2 women,
Mm-hmm.
And they came to me something like 5 or 6 years ago, and they didn't know how they could stay in business, and so I gave them a lot of ideas, and they put them to work. And but the thing is it it really does take a lot of skill and hard work to keep something going,
Sure.
especially dying formats.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm pretty sure video is a dying format. You know, streaming. Even records. I mean, we're going through a resurgence right now, but I don't know what the future is.
Sure.
I think Salzers will be around 20 years from now because we'll be a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
But just if you take cars, that have radios today, car manufacturers are building in streaming ability into cars.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, 20% of the cars have that ability, the new cars. In 5 years, it's going to be 90%.
Wow.
So what is that going to do to radio?
Yeah, because most cars today have more or less satellite service instead of terrestrial. Terrestrial is by the way of the dinosaur practically.
But so am I.
Yeah.
Things keep changing. I'm 72, and I work every day, but 5 days a week. I have to rest.
Oh, absolutely. Do you look back fondly at your rock promoter days? And is there anything in particular that you remember vividly, kind of a unique experience you had with a particular band or performer?
I have a lot of experiences
Yeah.
to talk about, but especially with the Doors, because I used to, for a time, do all their booking, and I was asked to manage them, and I declined. I had a bass player and a singer die, and I knew where Jim was going. There was no question in my mind that he was going to burn out, and I wasn't going to be a part of that.
Right.
I think my favorite relationship was with Jimi Hendrix. We met at Monterey, and we sat together watching shows. I booked three concerts with him, just shaking hands. And the first one he did for me, I was counting up the money after he left, and I was $500 short. And he'd given me his phone number and asked me to join him in L.A. to party with him at the hotel he was staying at. And I didn't have any intention of doing that, but I ended up going down there. Well, I called him up, and they said, "Hey, would you check the money I gave you and see how much money you have? Because I think I gave you $500 too much." And he says, "Yep, you gave me $500 too much. Come and get it." But he's one of my favorite guys. He was a good soul. I think he was murdered, and it's because he was going to change management. And
Wow.
management figured that they'd make, they'd make more money with him gone residually than.
So it was. You do not believe it was just self.
I'm sorry?
You do not believe it was self-inflicted
No,
drug
that he
addiction.
died vomiting in his mouth in his sleep. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just a lot of stories. Even Jim Morrison. I mean, they say he died in a bathtub, but he died in a bathroom stall, getting high.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's stories and there's stories.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, Hendrix was my favorite guy. He was a good guy. And he didn't deserve to die young.
Absolutely not. And you spoke of Bill Graham. Were you fairly close with him?
We spent a lot of time together. He liked to show off. But he did help educate me as far as improving the quality of my shows. Because I'd started out early, but the thing is, things just kind of got bigger and bigger to a point where I was doing shows with Led Zeppelin, finally. But the idea that, you need to bring in a professional sound company to set up. You need, and then during the time I was doing my shows, I brought in a psychedelic light show. One of the facilities I used was a building in Santa Barbara called the Flower Building, and it had a big dome. And the acoustics were murder, but a sound company can kind of balance out a room somewhat. But that dome was great for these liquid light shows to create the ambience. But we had to go in into a bare room and by 7 o'clock convert it to a real cool environment. I mean, I used one of the things I did is early on I bought a smoke machine, and I'd have to go down to the Union Ice Company down here in South Oxnard to get dry ice before the show, and then I juice up the room with fog, and lights, just trying to create an intimate feeling in a big building.
Did you ever have any kind of messy Spinal Tap like mishaps, gone during a show, or anything
I
kind of
had
occur?
a rough deal with Led Zeppelin. They had worked for Bill Graham the night before, and then they were going to drive down to my venue. And Bill called me in the middle of the night to tell me that Peter Grant, who was a really big guy,
Yeah, sure.
and his security guys beat up all his security guys. He said, "Look out!" And yeah, gee, there was a big story in Rolling Stone magazine about it, like 4 or 5 pages, explaining what happened. But the thing is when they got down to me, I was ready, and he come up to me with a couple of his bodyguards, and he raised his fist at me, and because I'm from Chicago, I just hit him real hard and knocked him down. The guys on your side of him caught him, and he starts crying, and nobody ever did that to me. But the thing is I used to have a punch. Oh my God! But the thing is I don't like a drawn out fight.
Sure.
Well, I've been in a lot of fights, but nothing recently. But I like to get them over with fast. I don't want to get damaged. Yeah, that's the downside of the fight. I've been hit with wrenches to the point where I was blinded for hours. And
Oh, jeez.
teeth knocked out. I mean, I've been through some pretty nasty fights.
Through the mill.
But guys knew if they were going to come at me, they had to have an edge, and usually it was more than one, or a guy with brass knuckles, or a pipe wrench, or whatever. But I had to learn. I grew up downtown Chicago in a black neighborhood, and I had to learn how to take care of myself and my 4 sisters, and I was the oldest.
Yeah.
So there was no time to mess around. I just, if I saw a guy's eyes flashing, I knew he was going to make a move, and I hit him before he did. He moved. I got to have fast hands. Had to be fast. But the thing is that's not a great story to tell. But the thing is, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't. Rolling Stone called, and they said, "We hear that Peter Grant and you got in a fight." And I said, "No, nothing happened." But we were friends after that. It's old school. And the show went off. Well, the show didn't go off that well. I had it was in an arena, and I had I think something like well, I don't know how many people were inside. It was either 15 or 20,000 inside, and at least 5,000 outside or more. And they were trying to incite a riot. They had pulled the doors off the building.
Mm-hmm.
They actually literally pulled the doors
Wow.
off. It was all I could do to get security to do their job, because they had started drinking.
Oh,
They were actually
boy.
drinking. And in that building, you had to give out a ticket to go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd give a ticket back when they came back. They were handing out wads of them, so the building filled up.
Oh, man.
And but then outside, I had 5,000 people in front of me, and then the typical ruffians, they'd come charging the security guys and hitting them, and then running.
Mm-hmm.
And then security guys would run after them, and then they'd get swallowed by the crowd and get hurt. I called the sheriff's department and I said, I need some help. I got a near riot situation going on. And they told me, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. So I went back. In those days, you had to go find a phone somewhere. So I went back to the situation, and I'm standing there, and a guy comes up behind me, and he says, I'm with the sheriff's department. I can tell you what to do. And he did. He said, first of all, stop letting your security guys run after those guys that are taunting you. And just hold the line. And that worked. And it stopped. But yeah, I'm a director at the county fairgrounds today, and
Mm-hmm.
one of my expertise is security. I know the importance of keeping a crowd,
Oh, sure.
cool. But I never had anybody hurt. I used to worry about, kids doing drugs, driving all the way up to Santa Barbara, and getting hurt. But just to backtrack a little bit, I used to do concerts in South Oxnard
Mm-hmm.
at a place called, well, I called it the Starlight Ballroom. It's a church now, 4400 South Saviors. But I had a lot of good acts down there. But the city shut me down.
Hmm.
They were getting ready to open the Oxnard Auditorium. And so they pulled out an old law that said that kids couldn't dance if they were under 18. And they had to have a chaperone.
Wow.
A blue law is what they called
Mm-hmm.
it. So that shut me down. So I basically didn't have a place to do my shows. And begrudgingly, I went to Santa Barbara to do shows.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because my customer for my record store and to my shows were people from here, I felt bad that I had to have them go that distance,
Mm-hmm.
and I worried about them.
All right.
And so I'd read, on a Sunday morning, I'd get that paper and look to see if everybody was okay. But yeah, I take responsibility seriously.
Oh, absolutely. So, God, I've got a million questions, right? With basically distribution and everything, with film or with, say, CDs, do you work directly with, say, record companies or studios, per se, with the distribution or the distribution houses?
Well, take one at a time. The record business, we do go direct.
Mm-hmm.
We're part of a coalition of record stores that represent some of the best record stores in the country.
Right.
And I mean, I guess you're familiar with our store.
Mm-hmm.
And there are stores around the country that are as good as or better than our store. The people that are really, into the music, and they work hard, and they do a good job. And so, yeah, this coalition of stores has been so successful that we put together a record label, and we help distribute for other record companies. especially when vinyl started taking off. We started helping them distribute the merchandise. So that company is called Junket Boy, and that's taken off. That's been really successful. But yeah, we go direct with Sony and WIA and all the companies that are still around. As far as the video companies, in the early days we used to go direct with the studios. CBS Fox was one, and Warner Brothers. They all had, you know, different programs, different pricing. But it quickly gravitated to what they call one-stops, where they relinquished distribution to a company that just, you know, carries the label, everybody's labels,
Mm-hmm.
and that's still in place today. It was really hard to. One of the reasons why I wanted to be on the national board was to educate the movie studios, because they didn't like video stores renting video. They wanted the business to be a for sale industry, where you had to buy a movie, not to rent it. And we ended up the association that I was on a board of directors with had to fight for what they call first sale. In other words, if you bought something, you could do what you wanted with that merchandise because you paid for it. Mm-hmm. And that was called the Sony Betamax decision. Mm-hmm. So we won the right to continue to rent. And because of that situation and the outcome, the movie studios always hated video stores. And we always had a lousy relationship with them. And I got to know all the guys that, you know, ran those studios and video companies, and we'd have arguments and discussions. And, I remember one guy telling me, you know, why should you care, Jim? You know, you own your own building, and you know your situation's different. You know, you don't have to, you know, worry as much about the situation, because, you know, all these little guys, you know, they're all renting, you know, from in storefronts and whatnot, and as it turns out, because they wanted them gone, they ended up gone. They never liked the video business.
I have, since I don't want to take too much of your time, for my last question is more of a softball question. As an owner of a video store and of a record store, what particular things today do you like listening to or watching?
Because of the coalition, we have annual get-togethers, and we have showcases where we meet new talent. One of the first people that I remember meeting and enjoying was John Mayer, and I took him aside and I said, well, see, the thing is, John Mayer plays guitar really well. Mm-hmm. And I said, man, you're going to have a hell of a future. But then, you know, I mean, he was making $300 a night, and, you know, didn't even have a record out yet. But I personally listen to the blues. I like blues. But in my car, I'm listening to, right now, Marvin Gaye, and just marveling at all the wonderful songs he recorded. You know, what a loss, you know, losing him.
Absolutely.
And then I love the Stones, but you know, I like hard rock. I really like hard rock. I like heavy metal. I have people that work for me that are in punk bands, and I go to their shows. It's all, you know, it's all it's all good. I like it all, but never was much of a country fan. Never opera, never classical. And we've always been a rock and roll store.
Well, Mr. Salzer, thank you so very, very much
You're
for
welcome.
your time, and I hope